Should we start with missing?
Sure.
Okay. What are some of the things that people need to know if a loved one has gone missing? What is it? What's important for them to know?
I think the first thing that people often need to hear and want to hear is that you're not alone. Is that there's community and other family members who have experienced similar things, who've gone through this before, and that we're trying to build networks of support, and that there are supports out there. It might take some time to find the right ones for you, but that you aren't alone, and that you will have people who will get your back and who are willing to support you.
Okay, I know a lot of people have said that they regret they didn't act sooner, and I know that the police often say, oh, they can't do anything until someone's been gone for 24 or 48 hours. What advice do you have around that situation if someone has not turned up?
I think a lot of times we're told that we shouldn't trust our guts, that we don't know what's right, or that we don't have the expertise or experience or knowledge necessary to know if something's gone wrong. And so I think what I want to tell and what I know from experience is to trust your gut. If you think that somebody you love and care about, there's something wrong, or that they're in trouble, or that something is irregular in their life, or if you haven't heard from them and that's not like them, to trust that above anything that police or anybody else might tell you, and it can be really hard to trust your instincts when we're told that constantly in many different ways that we're wrong, or that there's something wrong with us. And I think a lot of times we want to tell people that it's okay to trust your gut instinct. It's okay to say, maybe I don't have all the information, but I have a feeling, I have a sense that something's wrong, and I want to do something about that, and to trust that instinct and go with that.
Okay,
One of the things that we always want to make sure that people feel comfortable and okay enough to trust their own instincts, to trust your gut. If you think that there's something off or something wrong with somebody that you love or something that you care about or that you're close to trust your instincts and go with that. And it won't always be easy, and people may tell you, and we get told a lot as Indigenous peoples and young people, that there's something wrong with us or that we're the problem. But often, our instincts are accurate, and they do tell us when something's wrong, when something's off, and when we need to act.
And what would you do if the police told you, oh, we can't do anything, maybe she's out partying?
I think the police are one avenue, right? We're often told, and we see in the media so much, that they're the only answer, but they're not. Your family, your friends, your extended relatives, anybody you're connected to or that you're in community with, those are also options. Those are also people that we can go to for support, that we can also say, I think something's wrong and I want to do something about it. So yes, the police are one option, and sometimes in a lot of communities they're the only option, but don't forget that you also have so many people around you and so many other family members that have gone through this, that will say that's not the only option, and we're here to create more options.
And what would those options then look like, concrete?
Yeah, so if you're going to the police and they're saying that you need to wait longer, or that they don't have enough information, that's when you need to start building your team of support yourself. So if you're the only person that you feel like has this information or knows something is wrong, start reaching out to people that you trust, and to maybe mutual acquaintances or friends of the person that you're concerned about also trusts, and try and get some information. Try and start setting up, taking as much information as you can about the current circumstances, where they were last seen, information you can get, and establishing a timeline or figuring out what's been going on in their lives in the last 24 hours and what made you think something was wrong. Maybe you don't always have to focus on that, but if it's helpful for you to understand for yourself, when did you first notice that something was off and why? And how does that fit into the larger story, the narrative that you want other people to know? Because there may be details that you want to keep private or that you want to keep to yourself, and details that you're comfortable sharing with other people. So have a conversation with yourself or with somebody that you trust about how you want that information to be disseminated or put out to other people, and think critically about that, because remembering that we don't always have control about how information gets spread. So really think carefully about the kind of information that you want out there about the person you care about.
How would you deal with mainstream media?
Media is it's a very tricky situation. I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, meaning it can be both a good thing. It can help you connect with people. It can help gather resources, get support. Sometimes it's often the only way that people get information, particularly social media. But it also has the potential to be harmful, right? It has the potential to get details wrong, to tell the wrong story, or to be very harsh on the victim or on the person who's missing, because we know that mainstream media likes to blame people for the circumstances that they're in, or the choices that they've made, or the oppression that they face. And so mainstream media especially can be really challenging to deal with. And I've seen so many people deal with it in different ways, from, really doing all of the interviews themselves, designating an advocate or a spokesperson. You can also screen who does your media. You can ask questions of the journalist or the person asking questions about why they want to do this story, what information are they looking for, and for what purpose, and that you have a right to control the story and the narrative about this person, and that you have a right to say no as well. You can decline interviews. I think a lot of times I've seen people feel very coerced by the media because maybe they feel like it's the only option, or it's the only way to get information out, and they have to compromise maybe their privacy or safety or feelings of security in order to get that information out there. And that doesn't have to be the case. You can absolutely advocate for yourself, get other people on board, and say, this is the kind of message that I want to come across, and can you repeat that? Let's be on the same page. Let's say the same things, and that you don't have to answer questions. Media will try and get people to say things on camera, off camera, in audio, in print. They'll misquote you. All of those things might happen, but if you have a very specific core message that you're clear about, which is hard to do, definitely very, very challenging to do when you're dealing with a very upsetting situation, when you're grieving, when you think you might have lost somebody, and you're spiraling that way. It can be very hard. So whatever tools you have at your disposal to stay grounded, to stay centered, to stay on topic, use it, and use the supports that are around you. If you feel comfortable, you know what, I don't want to do interviews, and I'm going to hand it over to somebody else. Have conversations with them off camera beforehand. Practice what they're going to say, and know that you don't have to answer questions. So if somebody's asking you a question and you don't feel comfortable answering it, you don't have to, and you can just repeat your own message and take back control.
About social media, how would you use social media to get the word out?
So I think once you've established some of that information, once you've figured out with other family members or friends that you want involved, and knowing that, there's all kinds of dynamics, I know with families, with extended relatives, especially in times of crisis, but we do the best we can with what we have. So once you've kind of figured out what it actually is that you want to say, or what really thinking about what are you using social media for? Are you reaching out for support around being in crisis or grieving or dealing with a loss? Or are you disseminating information? Are you trying to get people in your social network who to share a poster or to share information? Are you soliciting for information? Are you asking people, have you seen my friend? Have you seen this person? Right? Really be clear about maybe you're doing all of those things. And so I think being clear about what it is that you're using it for, because not everybody uses social media in the same way. We all use it for different things. It has different purposes. Maybe we have different groups of people on different parts of our friend lists. Some people use it for employment. Some people use it to stay in touch with family that are far away. Some people just use it for fun. So really thinking about not just using social media as a catch-all, and also thinking about directly contacting people who you want to make sure see that information. The important thing to keep in mind also, especially with things like Facebook, is that it's not guaranteed that the people that you want to see the information will. So if that means directly calling, messaging, asking other people to directly share and post it is really, really important, because you want to make sure you're not missing anybody, or that you're getting it to the people that you want it to go to.
Okay, what kinds of support do families need that are actually witnessing a murder trial, that are going through a court process?
So court processes are extremely awful. They can be very re-traumatizing. They can induce feelings of grief and crisis and loss all over again. A lot of family members describe it as a repetition, a continuous cycle of having to live over and again the worst moments in whether it was in the last year or in the last 20 years. So I really think preparing as much support as possible and deciding for yourself what components of a court process are important for you or for other family members to be engaged in. Some people want to go to every single date and be present and be in the courtroom so that court officials or the perpetrator, if they're going to be there, are there to see the face of the people who this has impacted. Some people just want somebody to be there, somebody to report back to them because they can't be in the courtroom themselves, either because of things like physical location. A lot of times court is not in the same place that you live. I'll just wait for that to pass. So one of the things to also think about in terms of court support is, which parts of it do you want to be there? Some of them are very procedural and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I'm trying to think of the times where there's like, there's no substance to it. It's just like, like logistical. Okay. So the important thing to think about is how are you getting information about which court dates are actually important to you for different reasons. So each date, some of it may be logistical or maybe just formalities that the court has to go through about scheduling, which you may want to be there for, or maybe you don't need to be there for. So getting as much information as you can about what the purpose is for each date, and then making an informed decision for yourself about when you would like to be there or when you just want someone to be there, some form of support. Definitely asking community members or other people who may not have been connected to the person but who could maybe provide some bodies. So one of the strategies that families have used is calls for court support. So if there is a date that feels like it's meaningful, where they're actually discussing the case, where both the prosecution and the defense are going to be there, maybe the perpetrator is going to be there, that you can, if it's a public showing, you can ask people to show up. You can ask people to be there in support, either outside or inside the courtroom, to make your presence known and to let people know, and especially the prosecution know, that community is watching, right? And that this isn't just another case that's going to get swept under the rug. That kind of public pressure and that kind of media attention can and sometimes does change the course of somebody's case, can and does influence judges in their decisions. And we've seen this in a few cases, and a few family members have experienced this. It can also be a process or a way of processing the grief and the loss and what's happened, a way to see things through, or a way to simply get more information. A lot of times, sometimes family members are even coming across information that they didn't know in the courtroom. So in that case, it's really, really important to have support people there, people who are there just for you, just to actively listen to you, and just to get you a coffee or a tissue when you need it, and to really don't feel ashamed to ask for that kind of support, because it is a very intense process. A lot of people have mixed feelings about it, and it's okay to want to be there or to feel good about the court process, even if you have other misgivings or other negative feelings about it. Oftentimes, your feelings or opinions about it may change over the time. Court processes take so long. Sometimes they take years. And so knowing that this is something that you're going to be in for the long haul, I think a lot of families are seeking closure from justice processes. And so to know that that's not always the case, that closure might come from other things. It might not come at all. It's a very personalized journey, and it really depends on you and your family and the person that's involved about what it is that you need from this process.
Have you had good experience with, or do you know families who've had good experience with victim support services?
really depends on your region. So you're going to hear from family members and advocates from coast to coast who are going to have different experiences about the types of services that were available to them in their area, types of services that they accessed, and the types of supports that they had to build themselves. So really thinking about what's available to you and not excluding any options. Try it, see how it goes. Maybe you have a good experience with a particular staff member, maybe you have a bad one. Ask for what you need. Ask if they have experience supporting Indigenous families. Ask if they have what types of experience they have in the type of trial that you're facing. Definitely ask questions and advocate, and ask them what their role is. What are they really there to do? Can they be in touch with you once a week, every day? Are they going to be able to show up to every single court case? Is it going to be the same worker? Really those logistical questions about really what can they do? And I think that can prevent a lot of the disappointment that families sometimes feel when they thought that victim services was going to be there for them, and then maybe they had expectations that weren't being met, or the victim services people themselves were unclear about what they could do, or it somehow shifts or change over time because of caseload or other factors. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Seek out support wherever you can get it. And don't be afraid to ask questions and have very clear expectations about what people can and can't do for you. And be very, very clear about that. Oftentimes, the one thing that you can ask victim services to do is explain the court proceedings. These are often in highly legal terms that are very inaccessible to the majority of the public. So asking them to actually say, what does this procedure mean? What is the judge saying? Or what is the prosecution and the defense doing? What's the purpose of this hearing? There can be a lot of confusion and a lot of very long, intense legal proceedings where you may not understand what's going on and what they're saying because they're not speaking in plain terms. It may not be clear, is the perpetrator going to be there or are they not? Is it just going to be their lawyers? Really thinking about when that's happening. I think the other important thing to think about is making statements, right? So if you have to make an impact statement, if you're doing a victim impact statement, thinking about, are you going to submit that in written terms? Do you want to read that in court? And knowing that there are rules around what you can and can't say in court, and that they might actually have to revise your statement, which doesn't always feel good and doesn't always feel consensual. So thinking about what your role is. People who are watching this, you might be a direct family member, you might be extended family, maybe you were very close and best friends with the victim, but you're not blood family, and so there might be complications with how people recognize you or how people see you as part of that. And so being able to assert your position and your relationship to this person through your actions, through how you're able to support other people, how you're able to gather community support, and knowing that it all counts, it's all good, it's all very, very important that as many people are as involved as possible and give their input into these processes so that they can get what they need. This kind of grief affects everybody who knew the person, even remotely, and even sometimes we get to know people in death. We get to know our extended community, our extended relatives, because they've died or because they're missing or because something awful has happened. And that's okay. It's not okay, but that's a normal experience. And to not feel ashamed about that in the process. A lot of times we feel survivor guilt, or we feel like we could have done more, or that we could have prevented something from happening. And so really thinking about who's shown up for this person in their life, who's shown up for them when they were around, when they weren't gone or when they weren't missing, who was there supporting them day to day, and making sure that those folks are also present in those proceedings, and that it may not always be biological family that takes precedent, and the courts and the police
may not always be biological family.
Yeah. So while the courts or police or other service providers may place biological family as the most important people to be there, we know that extended family, street family, chosen family, all of those things, friends who become family, urban community, all of these things are extremely important. And that those are the people who are there day to day supporting somebody, and who also need to be front and center, and who also need to be included in these processes, and who are able often to rally different kinds of support that maybe a biological family wasn't around for or wasn't able to do. Keeping in mind that we have complex histories of all kinds of trauma, grief, loss in our communities that affect how we connect to one another. So keeping in mind that as you're going through those court proceedings, that may not be acknowledged, and that might be really hard. But knowing that everybody who knows somebody who's gone through this is affected.
A really hard time understanding about this. Is there like one
Yeah.
aspect of it that jumps out that people need clarity on?
I think asking people directly what doesn't make sense or what they're not understanding is important, because there might be parts of it that are very clear for them, either because they were present for it or because they're familiar with that for whatever reason. So I think it ranges and it's different from person to person. I mean, you almost have to get a full legal education sometimes to understand court proceedings and understand who's in the room. How do you know who the defense lawyer is, who the prosecution is? A lot of times they're not even in direct contact with a family member. They might only be dealing with the police. They might only be dealing with one person, one designated representative, and once they get the information that they need, they may not be in touch again and may not be able to disclose or discuss aspects of the case as it's ongoing. And that can be really frustrating. So figuring out who are the players, what are their roles, what can and can't they do in terms of talking about the case as it's ongoing. What's a courtroom setup? What are some of the terminologies that they use? What does it all mean? It's interesting, not interesting. One thing to think about, particularly in colonial court systems, is that it's not just a family member or the person who's been harmed versus the person who harmed them. There's actually the role of the prosecution or the Crown, and their job is actually to just defend the law, right? They're there to uphold the law, they're there to decide whether or not laws have been broken, and to prove whether or not those laws have been broken and which ones. They're not there for the family, they're not there for the victim, they're not there for the perpetrator. They're literally just there to uphold the law, and colonial law, not our own laws or governance systems, but the colonial Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Criminal Code of Canada specifically. Similarly, the defense is there for the perpetrator. They are there to make sure that their rights are protected, that they have some sort of defense strategy, to disprove as much as they can what the Crown is saying. So a lot of times family members will feel disconnected from the court proceedings, like they don't matter. They're treated like it's just their stories and their testimonies that they're being used for, and they're otherwise not connected to the proceedings. And unfortunately, think about who you want around, what it is that you need. What are the things going on in your life that you could need help with right now? And maybe what are some dates or some things coming up in the near future that you could ask the wider public or the greater community to support you in? A lot of people want to support. They want to show you that you're not alone, that you're cared for, and that the person that was harmed or that you're thinking about or looking for or going to court for, that, they want to show some way that they care and that they're involved. So really thinking critically about how you want people to be involved in your life. How do you want people to be involved in the life of this person that you're thinking about or that you're mobilizing around?
So some concrete examples.
One of the ways to think about it are start with your immediate needs. Do you have food, housing, childcare? Are you get additional people that can offer cultural supports? Are there young people that could offer to hang out with your kids or extended family members? Are there really good cooks, people that you could ask to bring over food? Or is that something that your community always does around loss, right? Think about what are the patterns and things that people are already used to doing that you can access. Now go wider.
And keep in mind that this could be over many years.
Right. Right. So when you're thinking about your immediate needs, thinking also about planning, right? So if you're in crisis right now and just looking for support right now, making sure that you have your basic needs met, that should be the first thing on people's minds. But if you're in this for the long haul, if you've been doing this for many years, really thinking about what do you need in terms of those basic needs supports. Do you need housing? Do you need longer term care? How's your health being affected? All of these areas might seem really overwhelming, but if you can get a support team and different people handling different things with you and with your consent and making good agreements with them, it can help you to delegate and offload some of those really big responsibilities and make things feel less overwhelming. So thinking broader than that, once you've got those basic needs and your kind of care team in place, what are some other things that you can delegate? What are some dates coming up? Do you want to participate in some of the larger vigils or movement building activities, community mobilizations that you've seen happen across the country? How do you want to participate? Do you want to be in the background and helping? Are you ready to talk to people about what your experience and about what you've gone through? Do you have other people that can advocate for you or who know you better and who would know what you're comfortable with and what you're not? And it would actually honor your self-determination, as in, would they honor agreements? Would they do things without your permission, or would they check in with you first? Really making sure that you have people around you that are in it for the same reasons you are and are there to support you, and that's their primary objective. So in thinking about participating in community rallies, in vigils, things like that, try and get a sense of the organizers. Try and think about their past events. What has the tone been? Why are they gathering? Are they gathering around ceremony? Is that something that you're comfortable with? Have you engaged in ceremony or cultural activities before? Would you like to? These are all questions that are going to come up as you're thinking about how you want to participate and what other people could do to support you. Keeping in mind, lots of people want to show support and want to be involved because they have their own feelings or their own experiences of grief and loss that they're looking to deal with. So keeping in mind the difference between somebody supporting you interpersonally, so maybe somebody that you can call every once in a while, get coffee together and have a chat and just process your grief together, versus a community member who maybe will be at events, or who has a really good maybe media analysis, or has a particular skill that you could utilize, and that you might ask different things of different people, and that's okay. Really try and get to know and use your relationships as much as possible, and build new ones too. Lots of people you're going to meet, you maybe have never met before, but they may have been involved in this issue, or maybe have been organizing around this issue for a long time. Use their knowledge and expertise. Ask questions. Ask them how other family members that they know or they've supported have dealt with something. Knowing that your strategies might be different or your needs might be different, and that's okay. But getting as much information from your community and from people who have been doing this a long time is a really great place to start. So in terms of ways that you can get involved or you can plug into the larger movement, there are so many things going on. There are so many things to choose from when it comes to how you want to connect with other family members. One of those examples is a really amazing commemorative art installation that's been traveling across the US and Canada called Walking with Our Sister. That goes to different regions and is really a massive gathering place for family members, community, and many other people to not only learn about this issue, but also gain healing, to be able to process grief and trauma and engage in culturally specific ways of honoring people who are missing or have been murdered. Yeah, you probably do a better job narrating that. Some of the other things that family members in different regions have done is traditional feasts and gatherings. Sometimes these are not isolated cases. This type of violence, unfortunately, is very normal for our communities. And so how can we gather together to honor the fact that this violence shouldn't be normal, but also build our own supports together? So that can happen in lots of different ways. And thinking about in your community, in your region, what is it that people do when they want to honor, when they want to uplift, and when they want to heal? What is it that they do? And start asking. And it's okay if you haven't done this before. It's okay if you've never gone to a ceremonial gathering before. you can totally, this is also an opportunity for that healing to happen. Okay, so one of the collaborations that's been really important in this movement is It Starts With Us, and it's called that for a very specific reason. One of the really amazing parts of It Starts With Us is an opportunity for families to build living tributes. So what this can mean is gathering together information, stories, photos of your loved one, compiling them in a way to show the public not only just who they were in death or who they were in their disappearance or at the time of their disappearance, but who they were in life. How did you know them? What was your relationship? What were they like? And this is really a way to honor the living, to honor people as they, in their fullness of themselves, and not just in the death or disappearance, because that's what the media is going to focus on, and so to tell a different story. Doing these ceremonies, gatherings, or participating in tributes may seem superficial or may seem unimportant to the actual solving of a case. It's important to keep in mind that stories and information can sometimes surface years after something's happened. It's in the telling and retelling of these stories that we gain a better understanding of how this violence happens, and not only how to prevent it, but maybe clues as to what happened, or to gain closure or more information about what's happened in your situation.